Does this game say more about the Raiders or the Dolphins?
I think this game probably says more about the new Raiders regime, right? Because on top of it, with how my narratives have been with what I wanted to start saying about the Raiders is look, and I think every Raiders fan would agree with me on this at this point. Um, yeah, the Aiden O'Connell like hype and all that, it's fun. It was fun for the fucking week it lasted, or whatever. I think the reality is setting in that like you probably aren't going to build around Aiden O'Connell in the future. Like
No.
you're probably in no man's land with this current roster with the QB situation. You're going to have to really feel things out over the next few years. But if you're Antonio, and you're looking and you're like, hey, hold on a minute, maybe am I going to be able to stick around with this interim position and make it full time? I think he's definitely leaning towards that. I would definitely start consider it. The way that all the Raiders so quickly, like we said last week, have started shifting around this Raider way. And I think there's a clear identity. At least there's an identity change. The QB situation has no identity, but everything else about the Raiders has an identity. They are the Raiders again. If you're a Raiders fan, I think there'd be nothing more I'd be wanting than Antonio to get that extension as the head coach, because he's showing that he's bringing back that old school shit. You need that. That's what the Raiders have been built on for so long when they were successful. I'm saying, if anything, that's just my narrative about the Raiders is, look, there's a lot of things about them in question about actually how the team's going to be going forward. But at least I think this might be the regime.
Well, I guess the thing too is like, look at Hunter Renfrow. Like, why was he just excluded from the offense?
That might have been the most telling thing about how much Josh McDaniels can come in
and
actually ruin someone's like mental health. Jokes aside, we won't even get into this because this is a whole soapbox. But now we can talk about it because he's not there anymore. The amount of things I've heard, and everyone has, this isn't like it's a secret. This is the best kept fucking. What I'm saying,
the most
worst kept secret.
Yeah, worst kept secret ever.
But it's like, yeah, apparently Josh McDaniels is a really, 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 really tough guy to be around.
Yeah.
Like really tough to be around in the sense of like, you're literally not going to feel like the same guy you were when you started working with him by the end of it.
No.
Which is really, if that's true, or anything, hey, Josh, maybe you got some soul searching to do before you come back into pro football. Because obviously, what I wanted to say, my point is, Josh McDaniels knows his stuff. Josh McDaniels is a football mind. Josh McDaniels, at the end of the day, has a legendary career. No matter how you want to slice it. I mean, he really does. Not a head coaching career, but a coaching career. So it's like, hey, Josh, cut the BS. Get back in the league, but just do some soul searching.
He just seems like one of those guys that just like can't help themselves. Like he's always just like putting himself in a hole. But I mean, for what you saw out of the Raiders offense, it was impressive, and it makes you kind of realize like, bro, they have Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. Like they have a Michael Mayer.
I was going to say he's coming into his own for sure.
They have all these weapons, and your team is just playing like shit. Like at some point, you got to look at the scheme. Like,
so that's why this brings me to my next point we need to talk about. I don't know if you've been seeing the smoke, been seeing the news, but apparently Devontae's getting traded to the Jets.
Yeah. I've been seeing that.
I'm going to say this.
I mean,
I'm buying into it at this point because the Jets are starting to say to themselves, "Oh man, after this year, especially after this year, we need to do something to really reel those fucking fans back in."
What capital are you spending? Like you have to fix the O-line.
I agree with that part completely, but I think that's also like, hear me out, like you were saying, where it's like, how are you going to pay those young guys soon enough? Especially where it's a guy like Sauce. To be honest, a guy like Sauce is probably not even going to wait until he is fully off the rookie contract. A guy like Sauce can, if I'm saying from my perspective, that was my client. I'm saying, hold on, dude, you can pull that whole stunt where it's like, if I'm not, you don't want to extend me now, I'm just going to set out this year. Like because he's in a position where you can do stuff like that. So you're going to have to start moving guys to feel out that cap space soon enough regardless. I don't know, make some crazy moves where you ship out.
They got $30 million next year.
That's where it is tough, though. It's like you bring in Devontae, you're taking out a good, 15, 20 out of that chunk, and then you have to move around, like you said, for everything else you have to fix with the O-line. I mean, it is definitely not the best situation, but at least $30 million gives you some wiggle room. It's not like wiggleless room to try to, when you're trying to incorporate Devontae. It'd be a lot without Devontae, but
he'll be a Jet.
He will be. I do have a lot of faith that will be something. If I'm going to take one piece of news that could be smoke and run with it, I think this will be the one.
I think Devontae was like, okay, this isn't it. Moving on to the other side of the ball, Tua had a decent day. Achan is hurt after I just traded for him.
That one hurts us.
Tyreek hurt, but also went crazy. Like the Dolphins won only by a score, but they definitely should have won by more.
No, for sure. I mean, but again, I think this kind of goes along with like what we were saying about how am I blanking on what team it just was? I'm blanking, guys. Hold on. The Lions. Because the Raiders and the Lions at this point, shaking hands game. Because it's like, or not the Raiders. What am I saying? Hold on. The Dolphins and the Lions shaking hands. Because it's like, yeah.
They kind of are a similar team.
You have to. So yeah, you got to, these are the ones you have to, fight out. Like, these are the games that you are going to, like, every once in a while you're going to play a shitty game. But if you can pull it out, you're the guys that fight, make the last plays. It's all it comes down to. I mean, this is the National Football League. You're going to have weeks like this. This was just one of those weeks. And over to Tyreek, because I was going to say, just a little nugget I had to throw out here. This is the third game this season, 10+ catches and 1+ touchdown. Tyreek Hill's on
he should hit 2,000 yards this year. If he doesn't, I'll be very upset.
He said himself that was the goal. And it's where it's like you're looking at it, you're like, it's going to be a tight race. But the way that him and Tua play, they have a couple weeks where he goes for 200 yards, and you're like, hold on a minute.
I mean, it's so crazy he was a 5th-round pick. Like, one of the best of all time.
Going back to watch his college tape is definitely something insane.
Yeah.
Because he really is. You watch him, you realize that how he fell that far because he looks so fucking small out there, but it's like.
He's like built, though. He's not like a skinny guy.
No, it is just so funny. Like, he is definitely one of the most interesting prospects in history.